Hello, Dylan. It's really nice to finally meet you and have you on the Traklife platform.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to meet you too.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and just your musical background and stuff.
Yeah. So, like we were just talking about before we hopped on the Zoom, I come from Williamsport, Pennsylvania. That's where I was born and raised. So, a little bit of a smaller town in the center of the state. Growing up, I was like super into sports before I got into music, and then me and like all my siblings took piano lessons, and so I kind of had a really early intro to music. And my mom was always singing around the house. My older brother was like a big musician, like piano player, so I was always around. And I took like piano lessons when I was a kid, and I really liked it, but it was like very traditional, just out of a book kind of training. But it was a great foundation for music. But it wasn't until sixth grade I picked up the guitar for the first time. There was like something about that I just really latched onto and really loved. So my parents realized that I was taking interest in it. I would come home and I would play like whatever we learned in class that day on the guitar like 100 times. And I think they got sick of hearing the same song over and over. And they're like, there's a lot more songs than like Smoke on the Water and Iron Man that you can learn how to play. So they sent me to the School of Music in my hometown. It's called the Uptown Music Collective. And was in a bunch of shows there, met a bunch of kids in that school that I ended up forming bands with and playing all around Pennsylvania with. And then I went to college. Didn't have those people to play with and write with anymore. So I kind of went out and that was when I officially started my solo project, and really spent freshman year and sophomore year just kind of writing a whole bunch and experimenting and having a good time with it. And that's when my manager and I met, and we teamed up and we released my first single, Feeling Fine, back in 2015. And long story short, we've just been growing the project since then. We've toured the Northeast a bunch, New York City, Boston, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, before COVID, obviously. Mm-hmm. We were slated to tour in April and June of last year. We were going to be supporting Travis McClure on his 10-year anniversary of Billionaire tour. But things changed. And then, this obviously, all of that live stuff kind of got put on the shelf for a little while. And it gave me the opportunity to really just focus on writing, which led to the most recent EP. Crooked Records is the one that just came out 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I mean, as far as like, not to, dominate the conversation too much, but as far as like my musical influences go, like the school of music I went to when I was young was like very all about not traditional music, but like 70s, 80s, 90s, like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and like Motown and stuff like that, like older music. That's what the teachers really taught me. And then it wasn't until I got to college that I really started listening to a lot of pop music. I got really into John Mayer, Ed Sheeran, Shawn Mendes, stuff like that, because I felt like that was a good kind of template for what I wanted to do as a songwriter and as an artist. So once I got to college, I really started to craft my music around that, incorporating the influences of what I had learned, learning music and playing music when I was young in Williamsport.
Very cool. Just quick side note that I thought of, who have you opened for before, like live performance wise?
Yeah, so we've been talking about this bunch today, but I've opened from everybody from The Maine, David Cook. I got the chance to open for Bon Jovi at Madison Square Garden in New York back in 2017. Wow. Yeah. Those are ones that come to mind. I got to go on a short run with Vinyl Theater. That was a lot of fun. I've had the opportunity to open for a lot of really, really cool artists. I got to open for Louis Watson in Boston back in the day. It's been a minute since I played a live show, but I'm really, really looking forward to that coming back, because I feel like for me, that's what I love to do most is live performance. And having had some of the opportunities I've had to open for, especially somebody like Bon Jovi, who's like, that's like my mom's favorite artist ever. And so that was like really, things really came full circle for me and for her in that moment. And it was really, really awesome to play Madison Square Garden, because that's such a legendary venue. And it really, like, the taste of that really made me want to continue at it so I can get back there someday. And we'll get
You
there.
will be back there, and I'll be there too watching.
Heck yeah.
So how has your style changed from like when you first got into music, when you first started creating your own original music, to now?
Really good question. So like I said, when I first got to college, like I was raised on the classics, like stuff that from the 60s, 70s. Led Zeppelin is like my favorite band ever. The Beatles, Marvin Gaye, I was listening to again this morning. Like I still listen to all that stuff, but I feel like a lot of that stuff really dominated the stuff when I first started writing. And like I said, I didn't really listen to a whole bunch of pop music until I got to college. So like that writing approach really dominated like the songs that I was writing. And it was a challenge for me to try to find like the way to make it like poppy, if that makes any sense. like I was, when I first discovered pop music, really into Ed Sheeran, John Mayer, Shawn Mendes, like that kind of thing, which I definitely still am. I love that stuff. But I've definitely tried to start incorporating like more of the modern takes on the classic music that like I was raised on. So like Anderson .Paak and Bruno Mars do like a great job of incorporating like the R&B kind of hip hoppy influences. I've always loved that stuff. So that's definitely stuff that I've kind of started to lean a little bit more towards, especially with Crooked Records and some of this new stuff that I've been writing. But I also love singer-songwriters, and I always like to let there be moments where it's just me and a guitar, because for me, that's like what music has always been to me. It's great to be on stage playing with a band, and it's great to be in a room, like writing songs with other people. But at the end of the day, like I really want this song to be able to stand alone on its own with just a guitar and a voice, just me being able to play it. So I always try to like lean on those roots. James Bay is somebody I think who does that really, really, really well. Like Neil Young, Andy McKee is one of my favorite fingerstyle players. So like I always try to let those influences shine through. But as far as the evolution goes, I would say the R&B and hip hop kind of aesthetic has definitely started to like rear its head in my music, if that makes any sense, while still being rooted in like that singer-songwriter pop that I fell in love with pop music through,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely hear that. And that's definitely a style that I feel like we've been seeing a lot in pop these days, is like a lot of mix of hip hop. And I love that. I love when there's some, spunk to the beat. So you just released your new project, Crooked Records, just a few weeks ago. You said it's kind of leading you into like a more experimental sound. So what kind of feedback have you been getting on that? Like, are your fans digging it?
Yeah, definitely. A bunch of the songs have been released as singles up until like before the EP had been released. There are two songs that were unreleased up until that point. One of them being the song Magic, which like while we were talking about with the R&B hip hoppy influences, like that definitely plays to that a lot. And that is the one song that's really like raised its hand. And a lot of people have really been loving that song. We've gotten a lot of great feedback on YouTube, on Spotify, on Instagram. A lot of people have shared it. And so I would say overall, the feedback has been really, really great. I think that the EP has a lot of different flavors on it. It still has moments like Problems. That's a little bit more of a stripped back singer-songwriter kind of moment with Brie Kennedy. Like the song like Magic, which is, more of a dance summer kind of vibe. And I love that. That's there. Highlight Reel has we have Maxwell's does two verses on it and really kills it with the hip hop element. So yeah, I think it's got a lot of different flavors of the stuff that like I really, really dig and the stuff that I really like to do. And I think it's a really cool collection of songs that are indicative of where I'm at musically at the moment. But it is, it's cool that there's a lot of different flavors, and seeing the way that it all fits together at the end of the day. And those 6 tracks is really, really cool to me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been digging it. What was your favorite song to make on this project?
That's a really, really good question and a tough one. Enough for me is one that's really, really close because it's super personal, and it really speaks to, a lot of the things that I've really realized in my personal life throughout the pandemic. So lyrically, I think that one speaks to me in a pretty meaningful way. I also love Problems because it's also, again, same thing, lyrically pretty personal and pretty indicative of what I've gone through in my own life like this past year. But I would definitely say Magic is, as far as like musically, being one of my favorite ones on the record too. But it's hard to pick favorites. They're all special to me for different reasons. But I would say those 3 in particular really, really stick out to me.
Awesome. So is your next project going to have like similar sounds, or is it going to be like even more experimental?
I think it's going to be hard to say because I'm still writing it right now. But I definitely want there to be moments like Magic that are happier, dancier, more upbeat. I definitely want there to be moments like that. While still being able to have those moments, like I was saying, where it's a little bit more stripped back and it's just bare bones, guitar, vocal, maybe, a drum and a bass here and there, or like snaps or whatever it ends up being. But I'm always trying to push the envelope, and I'm always trying to explore new territory with my music. Being, an appreciator and a fan of music in the way that I am, I always love when artists kind of go a different direction or incorporate some new spice or flavor with every project they release, and are always trying to, push themselves forward. I like to incorporate that in what it is that I do. For example, like Radiohead is one of my favorite bands of all time. And I love that they came out hot with Pablo Honey, and it was like early 90s. They were right on, the grungy kind of, rock thing. And then they took a total hard left turn and went super experimental and did like, the Strokes kind of stuff. Like I love bands that are not afraid to go there. And so I don't ever want to be afraid to go there and try something new. So, it's TBD what kind of new flavors are going to be on the new project, but there's still going to be, there's going to be moments that are dancey, happy, upbeat. There's definitely going to be stuff like that. And that's not to say that there's no way to incorporate those kind of new flavors into that kind of stuff, which is, what you always aim for. But yeah, we'll see where we land. It'll be a lot of fun. Stay tuned.
Nice. I'm excited for that. So when do you think we can expect this next project, or you're still kind of, iffy about the dates?
Yeah, we'd like to have a single out in the summer, whether that means July, August, or September. Hopefully July would be great. September is, if things get put off for a little while, that's probably where we'll end up being. But the whole project is probably going to be coming out 2022.
Awesome. So every artist has had to find like new ways to stick out during the pandemic. So what have been some successful moves that you've made like virtually this past year?
Brand sponsorships have been big for us this year. In the middle of the pandemic, we were reached out to by Truly because they saw some of the videos that I'd been making, to substitute some of the stuff I was doing in the live space. They had reached out to us about wanting to do a video for Truly as a sponsorship thing. So we did that. That was our first big brand sponsorship thing. We got great feedback on that video.
Wow, yeah, that is huge.
Yeah. And then we got some playlist support from Nike on a remix of my song Competition, which is very, very cool. And it streamed really, really well while it was on the playlist, and we got a lot of great feedback on that too. And it pushed a lot of people to our socials. So the brand sponsorship element was big for us. Like I said, we already had tours booked, and, having that taken away was a little bit of it was an adjustment for sure, but we found ways around it through the brand sponsorship element of everything. And also just staying active, writing. I mean, living in Nashville, being able to continue to write with people over Zoom. And also like what's really cool about the pandemic is the fact that I've been able to write with people I wouldn't have otherwise been able to write with, because up until the pandemic, we were doing everything in person. And so I was limited to the people that I could write with in Nashville. But, a couple of the cuts on the new album are with people out in LA who I, would have liked to have made a trip, but who knows if we would have met otherwise. So yeah, brand sponsorships and just being, spending more time in the writing space and the songwriting space has been really the two ways that we've been able to push stuff forward.
Yeah, it seems like it's been working really well for you guys, and you have a lot lined up for the future too.
For sure.
So one of your most popular songs is just a great laid back spin of You're the One That I Want from Grease. I was wondering if you're like planning any more covers like that, and how has that helped with your success? Yeah,
I mean, I love that song. I think the way that we took it was really cool. And Caroline's feature on there is really great. She's a killer singer here in Nashville. I think we're probably going to stay away from the covers thing, especially for this next project. I mean, I grew up playing in like I was saying, like a classic rock cover band. So I love the covers and I love playing other people's music. But I think for this next project, I'm going to stay away from covers and just do solely original music. But that's not to say if we're hanging out one day and I have a guitar in my hands, I'm not going to play somebody else's song. But as far as release go, I think we're going to stick to original stuff.
Nice. Do you think like artists starting out, do you think that's a good move for them to do cover songs when they don't have like so much music already behind them?
Yeah, I can't really say because everybody's path is different. And, what works for somebody might not work for somebody else. I do think that it's important as an up and coming artist to make sure that you have your own sound and you're not being defined by somebody else's writing or somebody else's song, and you're finding what it is that's uniquely you, because ultimately that's what is going to be something that you can make a career out of. And that's not to say you can't get your foot in the door by covering somebody else's song in a really unique way that has your own flavor to it. But I think it is, like I said, important to find your own identity as a writer and as an artist outside of something that's already been written and the template is already there,
Definitely. So what advice do you have for like independent musicians that are kind of looking to take like the next step in their career by like building a team around them?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I think the most important thing and the most valuable thing to me in my career has been finding people that you really, really trust and really understand what it is that you're doing and what it is that you want to do. But at the same time, being willing to push your own understanding and your own expectation about what the music industry is and challenge that, find people who are going to challenge that and encourage you to try new things and, try new writing styles or try new writing approaches and just trying to push the envelope and make you be better. Surrounding yourself who want to see you constantly improving and not being complacent with where you are and being satisfied with where you are. And also just fundamentally write like a lot. If you want to be an artist and you want to be a songwriter, you got to just write as much as you can. And then once you got 100 songs, write 100 more, just write a bunch. Definitely focus on how you're presenting yourself on social media and live. Once live performance comes back, have a kick butt live show. But more than anything, I think it's about surrounding yourself with people who you can trust, number one, but number two, are going to challenge you to be better and continue growing and to take it to the next level.
Definitely. So you said writing is definitely something that helps a lot. What about for artists that say like have writer's block or just trouble coming up with new ideas? What are maybe like some resources or like tips that you could give for them to check out if they're kind of stuck?
That's a hard question to answer because I feel like I've dealt with a good amount of writer's block this past year. But the things that have always kept me pushing forward have been just giving yourself space. If you feel like you don't have like a lot to say, or like you feel like you're not feeling super inspired, like be willing to give yourself the time and the space and, let it come back to you. Don't try so hard to chase it. Let it come to you. I think that's really easy advice to give, but hard to take and actually incorporate, but it's been very helpful to me. Also reading. I mean, we're very inspired by the things that we read, and we're naturally going to incorporate the things that we read into the stuff that we write. Reading for me has always been super helpful. It's kind of strange because like the reading I like to do is in a different genre. I love historical nonfiction, which sounds so weird, but just being like organically, like actually reading and giving your mind the freedom to just like create your own world based on what you're reading naturally leads to creativity, in my opinion, no matter what it is that you're reading. But for me, that's always been really, really helpful if I feel like I'm getting into a rut and don't have a lot to feel like I don't have a lot to say, whether I do have a lot to say or not. Reading and finding other ways to kind of get your message across has always been helpful. So reading and being careful about what you consume, picking up a book rather than your phone is really helpful. And then just giving yourself the space to live your life and let inspiration come to you and not chasing it so much.
Yeah, I totally agree. Every time I'm kind of lacking inspiration, like I don't write music, but I write like blogs. I always find that if I read a book about music or I read another blog about music, it always like sparks ideas. So definitely great advice. So you're officially going to radio with Magic, your song, very soon, and you're going to be the only fully independent artist that's going to Hot AC next month. So how does it feel to be competing at such a high level as an independent artist?
It's very, very cool. And that's cool to be in that space and to, have the opportunity to be up with those names who, the artists who I really love and admire. It's definitely an exciting space to be, but at the same time, it is a little nerve wracking because you are in the big leagues and you're competing against, whether it be Charlie Puth or Black Bear or Ariana Grande. That's probably more top 40, but you're still up there with those names, Taylor Swift and all that stuff. So I would be lying to say it's not a little bit nerve wracking because, I want people to like what it is that I'm doing. But I also know that, not everybody's going to love you. And, you have to be willing to take the great feedback with the, not so the tepid, whether it's bad feedback or not, but tepid feedback, but like, cause not everybody loves Taylor Swift. Not everybody loves Charlie Puth, everybody's got their own flavors, but it is really cool to be in that same league and be in the same conversation with those people. Because the radio, still drives a huge amount of listenership and, it's a big deal and it's like, I want to treat it as such. But I'm really, at the end of the day, super excited to be in the conversation and to be played alongside some of my favorite artists. I think it's a really, really cool opportunity and a cool space to be in.
Yeah, definitely. Such a huge opportunity. So definitely congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So what made you to decide to choose Magic for radio placement? with it being so competitive?
Yeah, I think Magic is the most competitive song on the album, and the one that sounds like, it feels the most like a radio song. It's happy. It's upbeat. It's higher tempo. It's something that people can dance to, and something that just like makes people feel good. And I think there is a big opportunity on radio right now to fill that space, because coming out of a global pandemic where a lot of the music that was on the radio was a little bit more introspective and a little bit slower, and just, with all due respect, like indicative of the times, it was really hard, uncertain time for a lot of people. But as we're coming out of that, as people are starting to make plans to play live shows and like travel again, and it's just kind of like this, I feel like it's a good way to capitalize on the time being more just positive, like
Definitely.
I think that it's going to make people feel good. It's going to make people want to dance and move their feet. And it's going to be like, okay, I'm ready to dance and live my life again. I know that it's been a really, really hard time for a lot of people. But I think, the proverbial light is at the end of the tunnel, and we're coming out of it. And I think people are going to want some music to celebrate and feel good too. And I think it has a big opportunity to be that for people in their life, and be a moment where they're like, okay, I remember where I was when I heard that song. And maybe it was the first time I was out getting dinner again, or maybe it was my first time seeing my friends who I haven't seen in a year and a half again. And I think that that's a really, really awesome thing to be a part of. And it makes me feel great that I could be that piece of somebody's life, a cool new era in the world.
Yeah, definitely. So with that in mind, when you were, kind of coming up with this song, did you think like this song is going to be coming out at a time where things are opening back up? And did you kind of create it to fit that vibe and to fit the radio? Or did you kind of just create the song and then was like, this is going to be a good song for when the pandemic is over?
That's a really good question too. I think when I wrote that song, it was back in October of 2020. So we were still like in the heart of it, like, and the holidays were coming up too. It was going to get colder, and like we were going to have to spend more time inside. And I think I was just like so desperate to write something that felt good like that for me, that I, as much as I could say, like I wrote it because I wanted people to dance to it, I wanted people to love it. I think I wanted that more than anything. So it was more for me to feel good and for me to have something to look forward to than anything. Ultimately, I'm really glad that it was one of the songs that we decided to release, and the feedback's been so good to the point that we feel good about taking it to radio. But I don't typically go into, I want the songs that I write to be stuff that people like, but I don't typically go into like a writing session being like, okay, this is the song, like this is the one that's going to be on the radio. It's just, I kind of let that like live its own life and kind of have its own space. But definitely when we were in the session, we played around with a bunch of different iterations of it. It started off slower, and I was like, no, like let's speed it up. Like let's try to give this thing some life. And so it ended up having some life, and we wrote the song around that with all the energy that it had. And it ended up just being this really awesome, feel good record. So yeah, to answer your question, yes and no. I wanted it to be something that people really liked and could dance to and feel good about. But at the same time, I think that was something I really needed to feel and needed to point to.
Yeah, no, it's been great, because I have noticed that like a lot of the music coming out in the pandemic has been a little, either just low tempo or just sad lyrically wise.
But totally, but for good reason, because I don't think that it makes a lot of sense for people being in the mindset that they've been in, and a lot of things that have been going on in this country and beyond. It just wouldn't have made a lot of sense for there to be a super happy, it would feel out of place, but I think, like I said, with the times being what they are and things seeming like they're coming to an end, and the world being able to get back to some semblance of normal, is exciting. And I think it's a good time for the song to be out.
Definitely. Yeah. We're ready for it. And it's definitely going to be on repeat for me this summer.
Let's go.
And it's streaming on all platforms, so you guys can listen to it anywhere you listen to music. My last question for you is just, if you could be reincarnated into any animal, which animal would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good question. You're going to have to give me 30 seconds to think about this, because I want to give you a good answer.
Okay. I'm counting down in my head.
Okay. I have one in mind, but it's the answer I always give. But I feel like it's a good one. If I could be reincarnated, like any particular animal or just like a category of animal?
Anything, whatever you want to choose.
Okay, well, I'm going to pick a specific animal.
Okay.
So my girlfriend and I adopted a yellow lab mix over quarantine about 1.5 years ago. I think I would want to be reincarnated as her because I would like to see what it's like to experience her life and everything that she experiences through her lens and how she perceives us, if that makes any sense. Like our life together, which is a really oddly specific answer, but also just like, I've always been a dog person. My family's always had Samoyeds. I don't know if you've ever heard of that breed of dog, but they're like the white, fluffy, kind of like Alaskan snow dog.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I've always loved dogs, but this particular dog that we adopted is just like so special to me. And I love her so much. She's like kind of like my daughter. And like just to, I don't know, to see what it would be like to live life from a dog's perspective, specifically her perspective, would be really interesting to me. That would be the most realistic answer I could give. But the answer that I usually give is a lion. I think it'd be so sick to be a lion, to like know that like you could crush somebody, you could like crush somebody's skull if you wanted to, but you spend like 18 hours of your day like just sleeping in the sun.
Yeah.
And just chill. Like they chill it until it's time to like, you know, go get it done.
Yeah, they're just super majestic. I totally agree on the dog answer.
Yeah.
Like I would love to see, you know, a dog's life from their angle. You should definitely watch the movie Pets, because that movie is just like a bunch of animals, like mostly dogs and cats. Like just, you know how like if your dog is doing something, you kind of like talk for it. You like make up something that it's saying, like just thinking that it's saying that. Yeah, that's what the whole movie is. It's pretty much just like, you're like, yep, I've said that before. I've said that before.
Do you have a dog yourself?
Yeah, I have 2 golden doodles. They're actually in their cage right now because they were barking a ton right before this.
My brother got a golden doodle. It's a black golden doodle. I think it was probably like 8 months ago now. It's so cute.
They're so cute, so fluffy and playful.